Dr. Amory Browne's Misleading Assurances on U.S. Travel Restrictions, an editorial by Professor Wall Street. Foreign Affairs Minister Dr. Amory Browne's claim that Trinidad and Tobago's strong ties with the United States shield the country from potential U.S. travel restrictions is misleading at best and a gross misrepresentation of geopolitical realities at worst. While diplomatic relations are important, they do not exempt a country from U.S. immigration policies, particularly when security concerns and border enforcement take precedence. The New York Times investigative report highlighted the possibility of U.S. travel restrictions based on passport security, information sharing practices, and the sale of citizenship through economic programs, issues that have affected several Caribbean nations. Browne, however, chose to sidestep these concerns, instead offering empty reassurances about close collaboration with U.S. officials. His response does nothing to address the actual risks and reflects a lack of diplomatic foresight. Here are 10 reasons why Minister Browne's statement is flawed and why Trinidad and Tobago is not immune to U.S. travel restrictions. 1. U.S. immigration policies are based on national security, not diplomacy. The U.S. government prioritizes national security over diplomatic relations. Countries like Pakistan and Russia, both of which engage in diplomacy with the U.S., are still facing visa restrictions. Diplomatic ties do not override security concerns related to passport fraud, data sharing, or citizenship sales. 2. Trinidad and Tobago has security gaps in its passport issuance system. One of the core issues flagged by the U.S. Department of Homeland Security is inadequate passport security and screening processes. If Trinidad and Tobago is found to have loopholes that allow individuals from restricted countries to obtain passports, it could face the same scrutiny as other Caribbean nations. 3. The U.S. has previously imposed travel restrictions on T&T citizens. In 2018, the U.S. placed Trinidad and Tobago on a watch list for concerns related to radicalization and terrorist recruitment. At that time, T&T had one of the highest per capita rates of foreign terrorist fighters traveling to Syria and Iraq. While restrictions were not formally imposed, it demonstrated that diplomatic ties do not prevent the U.S. from implementing security measures. 4. The UK's recent visa imposition undermines Browne's argument. If Trinidad and Tobago's strong diplomatic ties with the U.S. are supposedly enough to prevent travel restrictions, then why was the UK able to impose a visa requirement on T&T citizens? The UK and T&T also have historical ties, yet this did not prevent the policy change. The same could happen with the U.S. 5. Citizenship by investment programs affect the region's travel privileges. Several Caribbean nations that were flagged by the New York Times report operate citizenship by investment (CBI) programs, where foreign nationals can purchase citizenship. Even though Trinidad and Tobago does not have a CBI program, its proximity to countries that do, such as St. Kitts and Nevis, Antigua and St. Lucia, means that T&T nationals could still be subject to secondary screenings and restrictions. 6. The U.S. has a history of imposing travel restrictions on Caribbean nations. The U.S. has previously revoked visa-free privileges for Caribbean countries based on security concerns. The Dominican Republic and Guyana have faced visa restrictions, and there is no guarantee that T&T will remain exempt if it does not align with U.S. security expectations. 7. Trinidad and Tobago's crime rate is a factor. The U.S. considers high crime rates and gang activity as risk factors when evaluating travel policies. Trinidad and Tobago has one of the highest murder rates per capita in the region, fueled by gang violence, drug trafficking, and corruption. If crime continues to rise, it could serve as a justification for stricter visa requirements. 8. U.S. travel policy changes can be sudden and unilateral. The Trump administration implemented multiple travel bans and restrictions with little advance notice. Even under Biden, the U.S. has maintained strict security measures for certain countries. Browne's confidence in diplomatic talks ignores the reality that U.S. policy decisions can be swift, unpredictable, and unilateral. 9. Trinidad and Tobago has been labeled a human trafficking risk. The U.S. State Department's 2023 Trafficking in Persons (TTIP) report placed Trinidad and Tobago on the Tier 2 watch list due to concerns about human trafficking and weak enforcement of anti-trafficking laws. Nations with trafficking concerns often face visa restrictions, and this is an issue that the government has failed to adequately address. 10. The minister provided no concrete evidence to support his claim. Browne's statement relied entirely on diplomatic rhetoric, without providing any factual evidence to support his claim that Trinidad and Tobago is shielded from U.S. travel restrictions. He failed to disclose whether T&T received official communication from U.S. authorities confirming its exemption from the restrictions, whether the country underwent an assessment to ensure it meets U.S. security expectations, whether the government is taking proactive steps to prevent potential restrictions in the future. In conclusion, the government must address the root issues. Instead of providing vague diplomatic reassurances, Minister Browne should focus on addressing the actual concerns raised by the U.S. This includes strengthening passport security protocols, enhancing data sharing agreements with international partners, taking decisive action on human trafficking and organized crime, ensuring transparency in immigration policies. If the UK's sudden visa requirement is any indication, Trinidad and Tobago cannot afford to be complacent. Diplomatic ties are important, but they are not a safeguard against U.S. travel restrictions. The government must act now to ensure that T&T remains compliant with international security standards rather than misleading the public with false assurances.